Meet James Arthur Ray, author of the fantastic book Harmonic Wealth. James is an expert in leadership, entrepreneurialism, and personal development. And with him is Bersabeh Ray, his intuitive consultant of a wife and co-host is with him on the Modern Alchemy podcast. So I'm pleased to have you guys both on and, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having us, Daniel.
Thank you.
And he said your name right.
I know.
That's
Well,
impressive.
I watched the podcast and it's a great podcast. You guys are just wonderful, people with lots of great information. Let me start off with how would you describe harmonic wealth to people who haven't read the book?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you how I don't describe it first, and then I'll answer your question directly. 99% of the people who you ask them what wealth means, they'll come back with some form definition of money or some derivation thereof. If you trace the etymology of the word wealth back to its origins, it literally translates as well-being.
Mm.
And so wealth is something money can't buy. Now, I know you've been conditioned that it can, but you've been conditioned incorrectly because I've worked with countless multimillionaires and billionaires who are not very wealthy. They're actually quite unhappy. What good is bundles of money if you can't enjoy it? And so harmonic wealth is a state of harmony and well-being, wealth, in what we call the five key areas of life. Five pillars. Financial is one of them, but it's 1/5 of the equation.
Mm-hmm.
Financial, that's your money in your pocket or purse, your bank account, your stock portfolio. Relational is second. That's your relationship, first and foremost, with yourself, and then with your romantic partner, if you have one, or with your work associates, friends, family, etc. Then you have mental, and this is your greatest asset you've been given by your creator, your mental capabilities. Now, mental also includes both intellectual and emotional. So your greatest asset is your mental abilities. Your greatest motivator are your emotions. And those are all in mental. Then there's physical. That's health and fitness or lack thereof. And as well as anything tangible, physical is in the physical realm. So that bust of your head behind you on the screen would be part of your physical wealth.
Yeah.
I wish I had a bust of my head behind me, but I don't. So nonetheless, maybe I'll get one for Christmas, but nonetheless, probably not. Finally, is spiritual, and that's sometimes hard to define, but when you have it, you know it. And when you don't have it, you know it because you feel a sense of emptiness. It's your connectivity to something bigger than you. Call it God, call it a creator, well, however you want to define that. That's your spiritual wealth. And when all five of those are in harmony, not in balance, key point, then you're truly wealthy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, you made a really good point. Like in The Wealth of Nations, Adam Smith in 1776, he says money is not wealth. Money is just a unit of exchange to acquire wealth. Wealth is potable water. Wealth is arable land. Wealth is shoes, etc. And he even says there, which I thought was very wise. He says that you can judge the true wealth of a nation by how many children people can have. Right. So we have like little slips of paper here, and no one can afford to have families. They're living in, kind of cardboard boxes with a cat. And we're like, oh, we have so much wealth because look at all these Chuck E. Cheese tokens. And everybody's miserable. And so he would say that that wasn't true wealth, kind of like along what you were saying. I wanted to ask Bersabeh, like, what are you his, like, of those five fields, right? Are you his like spiritual, like kind of, he was like calling out to the universe. I need some spiritual input here.
Oh, that's a good question.
That's a great question.
Yeah, it is. I don't think we've ever been asked that question.
No, you're the first, Daniel.
I would say here it goes. I bring him all in through the physical. And what I mean by that is that I do, yeah, because for us, spirituality is everything physical. This reality is spiritual.
hmm.
Everything that comes into form came into form from spirituality.
Mhm.
So the work that we do together, I happen to run the things on the back end website, e-commerce, all that stuff. So I definitely bring that into form. And I also do the intuitive consultations that I do. And that's the same. And I think that's where a lot of spiritual misinformation is, that it's not about being, up here in the clouds and doing meditations and crossing your legs and trying to have a blank mind. It's about taking what you have and bringing something into a physical, tangible result. So if you could look at someone's life from a physical aspect, which is the only way we really can, is, are they healthy? Is their physical body healthy? What kind of habits do they have? Do they eat well? What do they listen to or watch? Is their home clean or dirty? What kind of people do they have themselves surrounded with?
Are they moral?
Or are they a good person? Are they a moral person? Do
I
they
read the book through that lens, by the way. I do ethics coaching with kids. And by the way, I plagiarized you in my last little ethics exercise with the children. And terribly. Don't sue me, please. But there's a word like in ethics, right? Like Aristotle talks about the telos, right? The telos of something, the end goal of something. The telos of a refrigerator is to keep your food cold. Telos of a toaster is to brown your bread. And there's a word entelechy, which is like the end goal of something. When you take something from its potential and translate it into the physical. And it's kind of reminds me of what Bersabeh just said, And so that's very that is. And I've noticed that this is your book has many interesting, and we'll get into this as it goes on, but it has many interesting philosophical and kind of ethical underpinnings, like Bersabeh just mentioned, habits, and so Aristotle says that excellence is not an act, it's a habit, and so it's good habit formation. And I noticed that that was a theme in the book as well. Like what are your habits? How do you change those habits if you want to reach your telos, if you want to reach your full potential? But jump in,
Well,
I'm talking
it'll
too
come
much.
as no surprise to you that Bersabeh is the reincarnation of Aristotle. Not many people know that, but that's probably why you're picking it up, because she brought it over from her past experience.
Yeah,
Well,
but
Well, I was just going to say you're Persian, right? I mean, so that Persia absorbed a lot of the Greek philosophers. Heraclitus, he left Greece and he went to Persia, went to be, part of the court, and so a lot of just incredible cultural and intellectual, things came to us, and both ways, not just from Greece to Persia, but really it was from Persia to Greece, So a lot of our great Stoic philosophers and stuff.
Yeah,
yeah, for sure.
absolutely.
Agreed. Agreed. Yeah, I mean, it's not only the words that come out of your mouth, even though those are important, the words that you choose to express. It's your deeds. It's all by your deeds. You got to be a, good person, a moral person. You have to practice these things. And that, I think, all bunched up together in a package makes you could say that person is a real spiritual person.
Yeah, nicely put.
I
And
wanted
of course,
to
she's
okay.
just a relational pillar for me as well. I mean,
Oh, that part, yeah, for sure.
we have an incredible relationship,
I can
and
tell.
I feel very blessed. I think we both
For
do,
sure. Yeah.
to have
Hmm.
that. We spend 24/7 together,
Yeah.
which we realized a lot of our clients during COVID
Mm.
2020 realized they didn't like the person they lived with very much and they couldn't leave.
Yeah.
For us, it was like, we enjoy each other's company,
Yeah.
so we don't really want to go anywhere. But that's magical when you can find it. It
Yeah,
really is.
that
You can measure
absolutely.
the quality of your life
Mm.
by the quality of your
Hmm.
relationships, and that's one of the problems, Daniel, in our opinion, that's going on in the world today, is that families have been driven apart, relationships have been driven apart. We in the name of unity, divisiveness has been driven in the name of inclusion and unity, but it's not unity. It's
Hmm.
divisive. And so it's driving us as a people, as a populace, further and further apart, and focusing on minuscule differences versus the vast amount of commonalities that we have as human beings.
Yeah, no, one of the things that I'm gonna hit that theme in my notes when I was reading your book. Um, John Stuart Mill, he talks about the populace of a republic, and he says in a republic you need an active populace, people who vote, people who do jury duty, people who participate in their community. And then he says, in a despotism, they want a passive population. And one of the examples that he gives for passive, he said, when an active person sees something wrong with himself, he says, how can I fix this? Kind of like your book, how do I do personal development? How do I become a better person? A passive person blames others. They say, like, oh, I didn't make it because they discriminated against me because of my gender or my race or whatever. They blame. That's a classic characteristic of powerlessness, entrained powerlessness. And I noticed that in your book, your book departs from religion. You say, in the book, you say that your father was a clergyman, and I noticed, and we're going to hit this theme. Jakob Burckhardt, the Swiss historian in the 19th century, he said that the Abrahamic religions were slave religions, where as opposed to Greco-Roman philosophy, which teaches you mastery. And I noticed that that was a constant theme in your book too, mastery. How do you not be a passive person? How do you not be a victim? How do you be a victor as opposed to a victim? But great stuff. Jump in.
Yeah. Well, the research
pretty good.
proves that to become masterful, and there is research on this out of University of Florida. The man's name slips me right now, but it'll come to me in a moment. But he is the end all be all on what it takes to develop mastery, and he said it takes a minimum of 10,000
Erickson.
hours.
Erickson?
No.
Okay, never mind. I cried.
Yeah, it takes a minimum of 10,000 hours, and so what that breaks down to is if you take 10,000 hours, that breaks down to about 3 hours a day. Anders Ericsson. Yeah, you're right. About 3 hours a day of what he calls deliberate practice. Practice with the deliberate intention to improve every single day, about 3 hours a day, every single day for 10 years gives you 10,000 hours. And he said that anybody can become masterful given that formula. It's just, unfortunate that most people are not willing to commit to that. You look at a Joe Bonamassa. I don't know if you're familiar, but one of the greatest guitar players ever. He's still living. He's a genius. He literally is. Bersabeh and I went and saw him live, and it's just he melts your mind the way he can make that guitar sing. And he started playing when he was 4 years old. Every single day he played from the day he was 4 years old. And then guess what? When he was 14, he opened for B.B. King. 14 years old for B.B. King, and everyone's like, oh, here's this child prodigy. No, he's not a child prodigy. He's been practicing 3, 4, 5 hours a day for 10 years since he was 4 years old. Mozart, the same thing. You apply that to anyone or anything. God has given every single one of us unique gifts. You have them, and you have gifts I don't have. I have gifts you don't have. Bersabeh has gifts I don't have. And we all have our own unique gifts, our own unique purpose, if you will. And you're always going to do much better towards mastery when you play with your unique genius. Howard Gardner from Harvard says each of us is a genius in at least one, if not two areas. But we don't focus on that. Unfortunately, and I'm on a roll here, and I'll try to reel it in. But unfortunately, social media and socialized mind has told us, oh, I've got to be a public figure. I've got to be a best-selling author. I've got to be a speaker. I've got to be a coach. I've got all these things that society has told us is sexy and exciting. And yet not everyone's meant to do that. And unfortunately, some people are and some people aren't. You're going to be much more happy and fulfilled when you find your unique gift and you leverage that towards mastery. Just because you have the gift doesn't mean that you're masterful at it. You have the seed of that mastery within you. And so then from that point, if you will commit those 10,000 hours in those 10 years, and I ran the numbers on mine, maybe I'm a slow study, but but I ran the numbers on mine, and I had spent over 20,000, over 200,000 hours, and over $200 million on investing in what I do. That's a lot of time and a lot of money, not all at once, but over time. And that's a lot of time and money. And yet that's really what it takes. So I went beyond 10,000 hours. Maybe I'm a slow study, or maybe I just refuse to quit. But nonetheless, we all have that in us. And I'll tell you, you're always more happy and fulfilled when you're doing what you're here to do and when you're good at it, because we all have this innate drive to be good at something, to contribute.
Yeah, that was one of the things I hit with one of the kids I was coaching, ethics coaching, and I was telling her a passage from your book where you were talking about how most people don't know what they want. It's not even just that they don't know who they want to be, right? They're telos, but they don't know. Like if you ask them, the intermediate steps, they don't know what they want. Um, and I'm no different. Like I was telling the young woman that I was like trying to lucid dream, right? My wife was into that, and I was trying to give myself a goal to lose, and I couldn't come up with anything. I was just like, well, of course, are the secrets of the universe or this, that, but something specific, not just secrets of the universe, something specific. I couldn't come up with it. And so most people lead their lives like that. They don't know what they want, and you can't get what you want if you don't even know what you want. And that was that, so I kind of used a passage from your book and I created a worksheet, basically telling the kids, not only what do you want to be when you grow up, but what do you want? Like what are the goals? And I give them, there was a neuroscientist named Gabriele Oettingen. She's a German, and she works out of, I think, New York University, but she did this book that was called Mental Contrasting, I think, and it was Rethinking Positive Thinking was the actual title. And she talks about she has a W.O.O.P system. It's like wish, outcome, obstacle, plan, right? So you come up with the telos, the wish, the goal, and then you come up with the means to get to that goal, the means that lead to the end. And you write this down. What are the obstacles? But and this is just a way of kind of, formulating this. But I was like noticing she was reverse engineering ethics. This is all what ethics teaches. And kind of your book as well. A lot of the lessons in there were very familiar to me from Nicomachean Ethics or from Seneca, a lot of the Stoic philosophers, especially Marcus Aurelius, and very, very impressive stuff. So I don't know. I'll shut up.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. Can I throw a couple of ideas your way for your next lecture on
Debunk me.
what? I hear that a lot. I don't know what I want. Okay, well, write down what you don't want, because we live in a polaristic world. So if you have someone write down all the things they don't want. I don't want to be broke. I don't want to be fat. I don't want to be alone. I don't want to be homeless. I don't. All right. Now, what's the exact opposite of each of those things? And that's a really good way that I have found to help people who are stuck on this. I don't know what I want, because almost everyone knows what they don't want. It's the way we're wired. We have this negativity bias. We're told in psychology we tend to be biased towards the negative. So if I can define what I don't want, now if I ask myself what's the polar opposite of that, that's what I want. That's what I want. I don't want to be broke. Okay, what's the opposite? I want to be financially secure. Okay, good. Now let's be more specific on that. What does that mean exactly? I can't tell you how many people I work with, particularly younger generations. I want financial freedom. Okay, what's that mean? $10 million. Where'd you come up with that number? Is there any logic behind that? I bet it's not $10 million. What does financial freedom mean to you? I can do whatever I want. It's so vague, it's so ambiguous. And so ambiguous goals and intentions tend to stay in the spiritual realm. Bersabeh alluded to the etheric realm, the non-physical realm. Specific and measurable come down into the physical world. Now, one other thing I would say to the process of setting intentions, and this is big for most people.
Mm.
What most people do is they jump to, okay, I want to create this. All right, now you know what you choose to create. And then the next question they ask is, how do I do it? And they get caught up in the how. I suggest, and this is going to sound quite esoteric, and yet we can get that way because life is that way. How is not your job.
Mm.
How's up to God. Your job is to define what you want and why you must have it. Why is an emotional word.
Mm.
Look at the word emotion. Emotion, energy in motion. It moves the body to act. And so if you can engage the emotions, how is an intellectual question. That doesn't engage the emotions. That gets you caught up in the paralysis of analysis. I don't know how. Well, guess what? I didn't know how to build a $10 million Inc. 500 company until after I did it. I know now because I did it. But when I set out to do it, I had no idea how. Steve Jobs didn't know how to build Apple until he did it. He knows now. Elon Musk didn't know how he was going to come up with $44 billion to buy Twitter, until he did it.
Mm-hmm.
But now he knows how. How comes in the process. The more important thing is to define what and why.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Bersabeh, feel free to weigh in. I'm curious what how these kind of lessons have affected you or how you utilize them in your kind of everyday life, your everyday interactions
Sure.
with your husband.
Yeah. Well, with him, yeah.
She doesn't know
I don't know how to deal with
how is
him. I
that her
leave that
job.
up to God.
There you go. Well, one of the things okay, I'll throw this one at you, and these are kind of my notes. There was a kid, and he was telling me, he was asking me about philosophers to read, and I told him that there was this philosopher named Plotinus, and he was the last classical philosopher before antiquity gradates into the Christian period. And he was a Neoplatonist. He was trying to kind of resuscitate Plato and stuff. And brilliant, brilliant. I never thought somebody could blow my mind like Plato and Aristotle until I read Plotinus. And he's famous for the theory of the one, that we are all one. And he gives an example. Somebody says about different souls, right? And he said, well, there seems to be different souls. How can that be true if we're all one? And he said, well, imagine like a light source. Imagine like an orb of light, a fire, whatever, in the middle of a room. Then imagine a million mirrors around it. So what you're seeing is reflections in those mirrors, but there still is only one, kind of source. And that was a section, I think it was in page 294. We are all one. And that's one thing. But here's where I'm going to throw you guys for a loop. Plotinus says that on the physical plane, the rules are different here than they are there, right? So on the physical plane, he said, look, we tend to go toward harmony, right? And you talk about harmonic wealth, right? And that's a theme, harmony, harmony, harmony. He said, outside of the physical plane, it's not harmony anymore because harmony suggests more than one, right? And so harmony is actually a lower level thing. The one is higher level, harmony is a lower level, and harmony belongs to the physical plane. And so I thought that was I thought it was interesting in the sense of religion. Like James, you seem to be a little skeptical of some of the things that you learned from your father, who was a clergyman, as we said, and a rich man to get into the kingdom. It's harder for a rich man to get into the kingdom of heaven than for a camel to get through the eye of a needle, and stuff like that. The meek shall inherit the earth was another thing that you worried about. And one of the things between the philosophy of mastery and the philosophy of kind of like slavery is, that if someone is going to help you, they should give you the handbook of where you are. Is it really helpful to you to get the handbook of, say you're lost in Europe and they give, I'm going to help you. Here's a map of America. That's not really going to help you. So if somebody is giving you the map, the road guide, and it might be well-meaning of the outside of the physical plane, right? Like the Bible or something, yet that's not going to help you here in the physical plane. Here it's harmony that you're going for. So Stoic philosophy and stuff like that gave you the tools, the handbook for here, not for there. And so I wonder if that's sabotaging a lot of people. They're getting the roadmap for heaven, when they're not in heaven yet, quite yet. And they're applying those principles and they're not doing harmony. They're not, because they're so caught up on the one, and that will happen eventually. But for the here and now, I really thought that your book was a great guidebook for the physical plane.
That's your no,
That's
that's
my
your
question.
question.
Okay,
Yeah.
so here's
Jump
my
in.
here's what I got from it is well, you said he suggested that the spiritual realm is where everything is diverse, and here is where we try to attain harmony. Is that right?
No, in the outside of the physical plane, everything it tends toward the one. Everything, all the souls are trying to get back to God, right? The
Well,
one.
it's the
And
new thing.
Oh, okay. The no thing. Okay.
yeah, and here is diversity. Here there's multiplicity. Here there or the illusion of multiplicity, And so here, like a chord, right? Like a musical chord.
Yeah.
And that's how I kind of interpreted the book, the Harmonic Wealth.
Right.
I thought that was a great handbook for here, for the
Yeah.
physical plane, but it had those elements of, like it was kind of doing both. But like I said, like where James's dad was selling the roadmap to there.
Mm.
James was a clergyman for like he was still doing what his dad was doing, but like kind of, like Greco-Roman philosophy as opposed to Christianity. If that
Yeah.
isn't offensive, I'm
I think
offending people.
talk a little bit about
I
the
think.
difference between traditional religion and mysticism. I think that's maybe why that's
Yeah, I mean
our
the
come
way,
from is different.
yeah, it's a little bit different our come from is because what we feel and believe, I mean what James's book does is kind of the handbook of how to be here, right? To be able to attain, like, say there, the spiritual heaven, whatever we want to call it. Um and the like the religious books, the Bible, Quran, whatever, they all, it's interesting enough, we're doing a series in our monthly coaching group about all the great philosophers. And
And Plotinus is upcoming, by
yeah.
the way. So
So,
big fan.
and we're actually going through the prophet messengers too, and all of their come from of, let's say, rules and regulations and what you're supposed to do and not do is very similar to each other, even to Plato and Socrates and I can't remember all the other ones that we've done.
Buddha,
Buddha, Moses.
Confucius,
Yeah.
Lao Tzu.
The thing I think people miss is that they think it's all, oh, we have to do this for there. But you're doing it, how do I explain it? You're doing it for here, because there it is all one. You come back to the one. Now, can you attain that presence while you're here? You can do that by doing those things that you need to do, because again, if the spiritual didn't exist, this physical realm would not exist. So you'd have to have, I think they are the guidebooks to how to actually live from that perspective. Yeah, it's hard to explain.
Two things come up for me. Spirit without form has no
There you
expression.
go.
Spirit without form has no expression.
Mhm.
Form without spirit has no vitality or life.
Yeah.
So spirit needs form needs spirit. They say in Kabbalah, God needs man and man needs God, because without man, God is not a creator. To be a
Mhm.
creator, you have to have created. And so therein is the divine paradox, if you will.
Mhm.
And so it's this it's not the grand illusion is that I want to ascend.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God, please give me a break.
Let's not do that.
I want to ascend. I'm on the ascension path. Well, how about I went and spoke at a quote spiritual gathering some years back, and they were all very spiritual, and I'm being somewhat facetious because, they had to have their beads and their white robes and their sandals and their eye gazing. And I'm not being disrespectful, but if you are, you just are. You don't have to prove it. You don't have to show it.
Mm.
You just are it. And so my topic was the the path of the descended master. You could hear a pin drop in the room because these were all individuals who wanted to ascend. Well, if your objective is to get out of here, why'd you even come here?
In the first place,
Why'd you
yeah.
even come here? And the second thing that comes to me is from the Apocrypha. If you're familiar with the Apocrypha, it's the 50 books of the Bible that were removed. And the Gospel of Thomas, in my opinion, one of the most brilliant that was removed from the canons.
Mm.
Christ said in the Gospel of Thomas, the kingdom of heaven will not come as per expected. For the kingdom of heaven is spread upon the earth,
Mm.
but men don't see it. And that's about as good as it gets. You know,
You mentioned the Kabbalah, and it kind of you made me wonder. There was a book a friend of mine had me read, a young man who's 19, and it was the Hermetica, and kind of the Gnostic philosophies in Alexandria in the third century and stuff. And one of the things in there that I liked was they said why you can see God and yet why you can't see God. And the answer to that was um, God basically for man to be able to see something, and Hegel makes this point too, you have to see the edges of it, the finite edges. Like you can see this cup because there's finite edges. And you can see a car because you can see the edges of the car. God, who is not finite, you can't see his edges, right? So even though he's right in front of you, you can't see him. He's too big. And so they said, so you can't see God because he's not finite. However, you can see God because everything in the universe is made of God, right? So this cup is God. You are looking at God. And so I liked your theme in the book of kind of taking things from the other side, translating them here, like Bersabeh said about potential. You're taking potential and you're realizing it. You're turning it into a real thing. So you're kind of like translating something from that other realm, and you're bringing it like Socrates would have called it the world of the archetypes, or Christians would call it heaven, or whatever you want to call it. To bring an idea like when a song didn't exist before, and all of a sudden, you hear "Here Comes the Sun" by the Beatles, and it seems like it always existed, and it was like he translated it from out there where we all had a consciousness of it and brought it here to this side. Or any product, any new fresh idea, it's like we all remember it. Socrates says that, we don't learn anything, we remember it. And so I liked your conception of offer waves and stuff like that. Would you care to expound on that, like your concept of sending out waves to the universe?
yes, sure. And then that comes from quantum physics, which is one of my most favorite topics. Not that I'm a physicist, I'm not, but I've studied
Mm.
it for over 2 decades. And most of the time I didn't have one clue what I was reading, but I knew that there was something valuable there for me and you and our daily life. So I stayed with it.
Hmm.
And what they speak of in quantum physics, and we have a 3-day experience on Zoom called Quantum Leap, and we get deep into a lot of these principles of physics. And what they talk about is that everything. First of all, everything is energy. Physics tells us that your house, your car, your body, your business, your bank account, it's all energy. What we know about energy is that it vibrates. It always has to be in movement. If it's not in movement, it's not energy. Energy has to move. It has to vibrate, and we call that a frequency. And so what happens is we are nothing more. This physical, tangible body is nothing more than an interference pattern of a multitude of waves that are dissecting each other and interacting with
Mm.
each other and colliding with each other in the 0 point field. And so it's slowing down all these multitude of waves beyond imagination so that it appears like there's a physical body here, but it's not really a physical body. It's an interference pattern. Now, I know that blows most minds. It blows my mind. But because we are energy, our thoughts, our feelings, our actions, everything is energy, and that has frequencies, then every single thing we think and feel, when Socrates says that all learning is remembering, he's right, because thermodynamics tells us energy can never be created or destroyed. So it doesn't go anywhere. Everything that ever was or ever has been or ever shall be is already here. And so it is remembered, maybe for the first time in your consciousness, but from the collective consciousness, Carl Jung, it's a remembrance from the Akashic records or the 0 point field, or the collective consciousness. And so we put through our intentions, we put out what's called an offer wave into the future. Now, this is metaphoric because Einstein says time does not exist as we know it. All time, past, present, and future coexist simultaneously now. So time is a total illusion, but it's a good construct to get us to a podcast when we're supposed to be there, and it's on time, and it's a good thing to utilize to function in a third dimensional reality. But in the absolute sense, it doesn't exist, and so if there is metaphorically a future, then, and by the way, there is a future. I can prove it to you. I've taken numerous people into their future, and they tell me exactly what's out there. It's already out there. It's a placeholder for you, and it's almost like it's holding. If you can imagine it, the old clotheslines. I don't even know if they have those anymore.
Hangers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you hung your laundry,
hung your clothes out.
you hung them out to dry,
Yeah.
and they're attached to a post here and attached to a post here, and they're taut in the middle, and then but you take that clothesline and you wave it like this. Well, it'll create a wave pattern, and that wave pattern goes out and it hits the pole out here, and then what does it do? It bounces back. It comes back. So if we can follow that analogy, that's what we call in physics an offer wave is the wave going out, and the echo wave is the wave coming back. Now, where this gets really sexy and quite mystical is that we have an impact on this. And Everett Wheeler Graham, multiple worlds theory, so many great, brilliant Nobel Prize winning physicists have told us this. We have the ability to alter those things. So if we were to change the pole, let's stay with our metaphor, change the pole that this line is attached to, would we change the wave pattern? Yes. If we moved it out, it would maybe lengthen out the wave pattern. If we tightened it up, it would tighten up the wave pattern. And so consequently, that wave pattern is coming back. It's echoing back. So there's an offer wave going out. There's an echo wave coming back. And then here's the other thing. That's the future. We also have the past. So now, I grew up in Iran. My first childhood memory was bombs dropping 2 houses down from me in my neighborhood. True story. And
It's choked up every time.
It's
okay.
It gets me every time. But I have all these, which she doesn't. But let's just say she did have all these unresolved emotional
I had
issues.
a lot.
We've done a lot of work together. All these unresolved emotional issues of terror and the world is not safe, trauma. And all these things, and so now that's the pole that that's attached to. So that is sending out an offer wave too. And so now you've got you here in the middle, and you're like, I want to change my life. I want to create something empowering and create something more beautiful and more worthy of me. So I'm gonna visualize, because they taught me to do that in The Secret. I'm gonna just visualize And I'm being somewhat facetious because as much as I'm grateful for being in the secret, it's very simplistic in its delivery. And yet I'm just going to visualize because that's all I have to do. I don't have to change anything. I don't have to do anything different. I just have to sit and visualize. And the bike will show up on my front step the next morning. Probably not.
No.
But nonetheless, I'm going to put that offer wave out, and that's going to go out. And that offer wave is going to put a pole of that bicycle in the future. Is a terrible metaphor, but me becoming a better, brilliant, more awakened person in the future, there's better. And now it's going to send back an echo wave. But you know what? It's colliding with this offer
With the
wave
past.
coming back from you're a horrible person and the world is mean, nasty, and ugly. And you haven't dealt with all these demons and devils that you've been fighting internally your entire life. And guess what? They're gonna be out of synchrony. They're not going to work together. And so then you go, well, I'm powerless. What am I, epigenetics tells me 50% of who I am is in my DNA. I'm basically screwed because I have a long history of Middle Eastern culture and a lot of pain and a lot of suffering. And I can say that because my wife is part of that. And so, what can I do? Well, epigenetics also says you have 50% that you're totally in control of. And so you have to change those waves. And I know that's really complex and I did my best to condense it, but that's the work that we do. What you have to do is go back and change that offer wave that's coming back from the unresolved emotional issues that we didn't have the resources and the abilities to deal with when we were younger. So we stuffed them and we suppressed them and we gritted it out and pushed through them, just doing our best to survive. And that's what we had to do at the time, but it doesn't serve us now.
Yeah, well, in the book, you have a good metaphor too about a mirror, right? So your body itself is putting out an offer wave and is bouncing off the mirror and coming back to you. And you said that it can't reflect back anything that you're not giving it. And so it kind of reminded me of those like a woman might have an abusive alcoholic husband because her dad was an abusive alcoholic guy, and then she divorces the husband, and then she dates, and then she finds another guy, and he turns out to be an abusive alcoholic, and it's because she hasn't changed like you use the metaphor of the pole, right? She hasn't changed it, so it's only going to be giving back what she's putting out into the universe. And so I like that concept that you give of, you change yourself. And then, by changing yourself, you're going to change the kind of frequency that you're putting out there. And so if you, and I'm going to hit this, and it's not original to you, you said, but that concept of you had a teacher, a mentor who said that, it's not about the money. It's not about the slips of paper. It's about the person that you will need to be able to achieve that, so you're changing who you are, and it's kind of like that will change the offer wave, that you're putting out in the universe, and you can kind of modulate that. I thought that was very profound.
Yeah, it's unbelievable how much power we really have, and we give it away.
True. Yeah.
We give it away. It's time to take your power back. It really is, and that's what we're committed to.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things we're committed to is creating independent thinkers. And one of the first steps is that you have to take full responsibility for your life.
Nobody
Right.
likes hearing that.
No, they
Yeah, exactly. Because power doesn't reside in there. Like, if you control other people, like most of these institutions, they have that, we want to control you, therefore you be passive. Whereas, like, just getting back to the philosophy theme, it's about you being a master. Like there was a book called Justinian's Flea by William Rosen, and he said that. He said Stoic philosophy was the leadership training program for the ruling class, that everyone else didn't have that. They just had random kind of out of context. They didn't have systematic thought, and philosophy taught you systematic thought. And one of the things that, just really quickly, and I hope I'm not talking too much, but religion tends to be dualistic. I was talking to an author named Joseph Farrell, and he got his degree in patristics at Oxford, and so he's a expert on the early church and stuff. And so he was pointing out, like Gnostic philosophy dualistic, up, down, black, white, good, evil. And he said philosophy, however, tends to be tripartite, or it's three-part. Like Aristotle's golden mean. He has like the mean in the middle, right? So say truth is your end goal, then the excess is exaggeration, the defect is irony. So it's three-part. Or A equals B, B equals C, A equals C. That's three-part, right? The syllogism, Hegel, thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. It's three-part. And so in reading the book, it struck me that it was more like philosophy, right? So there's well, in a sense, right? So there's religion is thesis, antithesis would be philosophy, but synthesis would be kind of like personal development. You're taking the two and you're kind of synthesizing them into this very interesting handbook, guidebook. And like I said, I was very impressed.
In the mysteries, that's called the law of the triangle.
Oh
And
yeah.
I've been really blessed. I've had six major mentors in my life, and I've been initiated into three shamanic orders, real
Hmm.
shamanic orders, in the Amazon and in the Andes Mountains, and I've been initiated into two full-fledged mystery schools,
Hmm.
real mystery schools. Um, and the mysteries are hermetics. You mentioned one of the books from hermetics, and alchemy and Kabbalah. All those things are grounded in alchemy,
Hmm.
and alchemy is kind of the overarching. And there's a law in alchemy called the law of a triangle, and it says that anything that is divided in two for the sake of creation creates a functional third. So it's exactly what you're talking about.
Hmm.
Um, you have the thesis, the antithesis, and then the synthesis, and so like a simple example in this relationship, you have James, you have Bersabeh, and then you have the relationship,
Hmm.
and we do work with couples in relationship, and what most couples don't understand is that functional third. That functional third is a living entity. The relationship itself is a living entity.
Hmm.
It's not all about Bersabeh, and it's not all about James. It's the merging and the synthesis of both of us, and it's give and take, and it's a it's a blending, and sometimes you if you're wise, you make a decision that's best for the relationship versus just what's best for me. And that's where we get lost. And you could
Yeah.
apply that to business. You can apply it to anything. Anything that is divided for the sake of manifestation
Mm.
creates a functional third. And that functional third is the functional. And that's what it says in Kabbalah too. If you look at it, on the tree of life, there's all there's 10 portals, and there's the higher self portion of the tree of life is called Gebura, Gedula, and Tiferet. Well, Tiferet is the Christ consciousness,
Mm.
and those three are the triangle, and Gebura, also known as Mars, the god of war, Gadula, also known as Jupiter, the supreme god. Those are the polarities. But the synthesis of those two is Tiferet, which translates from Hebrew into the beauty. That's the Christ consciousness. To be able to pull from both and to use both, because any virtue taken to an extreme is a vice. If you have mercy, which is Jupiter, expansion, big king, big abundance. If you have mercy with no severity, well, then you create weakness.
Hmm.
If you have severity, Mars, let's go to war, let's sever limbs, without any mercy, then you have cruelty.
Hmm.
And so you've got to have both. Both have to be in harmony with each other. There's that word again. And they synthesize into that functional third.
Well, one of the things too, you reverse engineer ethics as well, in the sense of you just mentioned vices, virtues and vices, and I explain to my kids that, like a vice has all the fun up front, right? You get the drugs and it feels really good, and the negative consequences happen much later. In virtue, it's the opposite, So in virtue, you do all the hard work up front. You say you exercise like you, James. By the way, I'm still the 150-pound weakling that you describe in your book. I didn't want to be 100. I'm looking at myself on the scale, crying. A single tear came down. But anyway, but yeah, so you exercise, right? And it might be a year, 2 years, however long it takes, but eventually you get that payoff, or you learn a language, right? Bersabeh, right? You learn a new language for whatever reason you must. And after so many, years of studying that language, and you get proficiency, and true happiness comes from that. But it starts with pain. And you in your book, you describe it. Are you a now person or are you a later person? And the now person is the vice, is the people who want the payoff now, and they don't care about the consequences. The later person is the virtuous person, and those are your terms. But I liked one of the things that's going to stay with me from your book. Two things actually. I'll tell you the second one, but the first one was you said the difference between spending time and investing time. That the vice person, the now person, spends time. It is gone. The later person invests time, and that's going to stay with me. So. Oh, and the second thing that was going to stay with me was before every great breakthrough must come a breakdown. Those two lines from the book are going to stay in my subconscious.
Very,
Agreed.
very appropriate line for what's going on in the world right now.
Oh, for sure.
If you look around, we're going through a tremendous breakdown in our world right now, and that has to happen. Excuse me. It has to happen because unless there's a space for a new emergent, there's no space for a new emergent, and it'll be interesting to see, Daniel, where things go. And none of us have a crystal ball, but you've obviously studied a lot of philosophy, and you can reflect on history, and any of us who have done even a cursory overview of history can't help but be reminded of the fall of great empires, and what we're going through right now is that breakdown. Breakdown is really hard. It's frightening. It's uncomfortable. It's uncertain in many ways. And yet that's where you have to keep the faith. You really do. You have to keep the faith, and you have to keep moving forward, because to roll up and die is to roll up and die, and to get
up.
and to get exactly what you don't want. And so if we can keep in perspective that we're going through a birthing process right now, and the other way, the now and later, thank you. And I'm so honored that you are so well read on my book, and that you can quote it. It really means a lot to me. Another
I
analogy
have to. I'm plagiarizing it, but go ahead.
that's okay. It wouldn't be the
At least
first.
you're honest.
It won't be the first or the last time, I promise. But at least you
tell the
admit it.
truth.
Most people don't admit it. But the other analogy I use is pleasing activities or pleasing results. What are you really committed to? Pleasing activities, pleasing results. Because the now person wants pleasing activities. That's what brings teenage pregnancy. Being in the moment. Oh, let's be in the now. How many times we hear that spiritually? Let's be in the now. Well, no, being in the now creates drug addiction. It creates teenage pregnancy. And is there a time and a place to be in the present? Sure there is, but it's not all the time. And so are you committed to pleasing activities or pleasing results? Because most often when you're committed to pleasing activities, those don't bring pleasing results. They just don't. Pain is the mother of all growth. It really is. And I know that's not popular, and and it's a hard sell, but
Yeah.
it's the reality. I have to be honest, and I've earned my gray hairs at this point, and just marketing teams sometimes say to me, "Don't say those things. It's not going to sell that well." Well, if it doesn't, it doesn't. If it doesn't sell, then it's not the right audience, because I want people who are awake and who are ready to understand how things work and are willing to do the work. And Pain is what teaches us where something's off. When you have pain in your body, just to be mundane, it's your body telling you, hey, something's off. You've got some toxins. You shouldn't have had that pepperoni pizza. Whatever it is, something's off. And so getting it back on. Pain is the signal to get it back on. It's not a signal to suffer. It's a signal to grow. Not popular, but true nonetheless.
Okay. Well, with that, I will end this interview. And James Arthur Ray and Bersabeh Ray, how can people find you?
Go ahead.
Well, we have a free gift for your audience.
I think Harmonic Wealth would be a great free gift for them,
Yes.
given that we've talked all about it.
You just go to harmonicwealthglobal.com/book, and you could download a free ebook of Harmonic Wealth. We also, or for those who don't want to read, you could watch the movie. We'll also gift that to your audience. And it's the same, harmonicwealthglobal.com/movie. So we hope you enjoy that from us to you.
Awesome. And that's a good Christmas gift, right?
Yeah, there you
Daniel,
go.
statue Daniel with the hat. Okay. Well, with that, I hope I can have you guys back on again soon. You guys were awesome. I'd like to take a moment to thank you for watching. If you'd like to stay updated, hit the like and subscribe buttons. But more importantly, if you don't want to see me reduced to shelling my old merch, such as the Daniel Natal in action figure, where you can see Daniel engaging in an action as he watches TV, or engaging in an action as he surfs the internet, or failed products like the Daniel Natal Pez dispenser, or the even more ill-considered Daniel Natal urinal cake, think about supporting the show by buying one of my books. For instance, you can buy my book, Actionable Ethics. The link is in the description below.